Hello, this is Sondra Oster Baras bringing you a few words of Bible from the heart of Biblical Israel. Here we are again, starting from the beginning. We are beginning with Genesis, and this week's Torah portion is Bereisheet, which means in the beginning. It is actually the first word of the Bible and the first word of today's Torah portion. I would like to focus on the very beginning of chapter 2. Creation is over. God has created the entire world in 6 days. And now we have reached the seventh day. And we learn here God completed all the heavens and all the earth and all its, luminaries. And God has completed his work on the seventh day, okay, or just coming up to the seventh day. By the seventh day, he had completed his work, and he is going to rest. He rested on the seventh day from all his work, and he therefore blessed the seventh day and sanctify it, because on that day he ceased all his work of creation. Okay, this is these first three verses. Now, if you think about it, we all know the seventh day is the Sabbath. God created the world in 6 days. This is something we know. But what do we really know about this? What does this all mean? Okay, so for us, the 6 days of creation are days of creation for human beings as well. Now, we're not God. We don't create things from nothing, but every single day that we work, we are creating. We are doing something. We are coming up with new ideas. We are creating relationships. We are working hard to produce food. We are working hard to solve problems. And today, of course, in our technological societies, so many of us work in ways that have nothing to do with producing food. In ancient times, the main occupation had something to do with producing food. But what we're doing today is solving problems, and everything's gotten so sophisticated. But that too is a very creative process and benefits humanity, certainly. But there is a finiteness to that process, and that finiteness is 6 days. There is a seventh day that is different. That is not a day for creativity. It's a day for rest. And I think very often people focus on the word work. He concluded his work. But what you have to keep remembering is in this scripture, it doesn't just say his work, it's work that he did. And when you think about it, the work that he did, the work of creation was a work of creativity. So when we talk about the 6 days of creation and we talk about our 6 days of working during the week, it is not just working, it is creativity. Okay, so even though if you're not working hard and sweating, okay, but if you're creating something, if you're changing something, that is not, and I don't mean by thinking creatively, I mean doing something that changes something, that moves a process forward, that is also something that you should not be doing on the Sabbath. And if I go back to our high-tech example, okay, now nobody can say that sitting in front of a computer screen and putting your fingers along the keyboard is going to create a sweat. Okay, it's not taking that hoe and working hard. But it is part of that creative process of moving things forward that is part of a weekday activity and is not part of Sabbath, because on Sabbath we stop. In the same way that God stopped, we stop. Okay? Now, what does this mean? Here we have a Sabbath day. Here we don't have any mention about how we as human beings are supposed to observe this holiday. That comes later in the Ten Commandments. We have an exact, a very specific command to observe or to remember the Sabbath day. And we believe that that is a commandment that's given to the Jewish people. And we have many laws that have grown out of that commandment and traditions dating back to times of Moses and other traditions that have developed since. So for us, the Sabbath is a very unique day, and it's a day we do things, certain things, we don't do other things. But aside from how we observe the Sabbath, we need to recognize from Genesis 2 that the Sabbath exists because God created it. In a sense, God created the Sabbath in the same way that he created everything else in the world. He sanctified that day and set it apart. So the question then becomes, if you're Jewish, you have all these rules and things you're supposed to do. But if you're not Jewish, It is not a day that you can afford to ignore. What content you put into that day, there's a lot of flexibility. But I think it is something that everybody must recognize is a day that God rested, is a day that God sanctified, is a day that God set aside, is different from every other day. And I think every human being should be reflecting on what that means in his life. Is it a day you take off from work? Maybe. That would be a good idea. Every human being really needs a day off. And it would be wonderful if the entire world had a universal day off. So it's a day that everybody sat back and relaxed, and we're not chasing their tails and trying to just worry about production and creativity, but a day that you stop and you think and you reflect. And I'm not, there are people out there who say, oh, non-Jews need to also observe the Sabbath. I'm not there. I don't think that's true. I think that there are Jewish traditions, and if somebody wants to take them on, they're welcome to. But it's not something I believe that God has set aside for the entire world. What God has set aside for the entire world is a sanctification of a particular day. And every individual can look at himself and look at his life and say, how do I honor that seventh day in a way that it sanctifies God's name, and that it gives credit, gives respect, honors what God did when he set aside that day as an especially holy day. Have a wonderful weekend, and as you contemplate what Sabbath means, I will wish you Shabbat Shalom.
I hope you enjoyed that film. And we have lots more film content and emails and articles that I'm sure you will enjoy as well. Check out our website at CFOIC.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You can do that right from the homepage. I know you will really enjoy the content that will land in your inbox on a regular basis. Hope to see you soon.